guys, welcome back to my channel. So this video has been a highly requested video. I get questions all the time about my ear piercing, stretched ear holes. I'm not going to call them gauges because I know how many people that pisses off, so I'm going to use the correct term, my stretched ears. But I get tons of questions on them regarding their size, regarding what jewelry I wear, regarding how I even went about stretching in the first place, like how did I learn how to do it. So this is going to be a beginner's guide to stretching. I want to put a clear disclaimer that I am not an ear stretching professional. I don't stretch ears for a living, so if my facts are not 100% correct, then I do apologize. This is just my research and what I've learned from my experience stretching my ears. I have been stretching my ears for exactly a year now, so this is just going to be my tips and tricks and the info that I've learned to, you know, get where I am. I'm not an expert, but I do know enough to, you know, have stretched ears for a year now. So if you are curious about the holes in my ears or intrigued by them, or maybe you're a beginner and you really have wanted to start stretching your ears, but you have no idea how to do it, then I hope that this video helps, and yeah, let's get into it. So when it comes to stretching your ears, there are obviously multiple ways to go about it, but I'm not going to go over every single way to stretch your ears. I'm only going to go over the way that I know how to do it and the way that I stretched my ears. So my ears are currently stretched to a 2 gauge. So this is what it looks like. I mean, it's kind of hard to see from back here. I will zoom in so you guys can see how big the diameter of this hole actually is, but this is the size 2 in a gauge measurement. So to give you a little bit of relativity, like size-wise, how big this hole actually is compared to, let's say you have your ears just pierced, normal piercing. You most likely have an 18 gauge little earring. So from 18, which is a standard earring size, it will go down by 2. So it will go from 18 to 16 gauge, 16 gauge to 14 gauge. So if you can imagine, I've been from 18, where I was when I just had my ears pierced normally, all the way down to a 2. So I've gone 18, 16, 14, 12, 10, 8, 6, 4, 2. So I have stretched my ears a total of 9 times. So the way that I stretched my ears, I used a tool called a taper. Now a taper is exactly what it sounds like. It is just a piece of metal, or there are different forms of tapers. They have glass ones. Surgical steel and glass are typically the best type of tapers to use because they're going against a open wound, which is basically what's happening when you're stretching your ears. You're causing trauma to your ear, so it's basically like you're cutting, not cutting, but you're stretching, so it's you're ripping your ear basically. But you want a material that is not going to aggravate that flesh wound. So surgical steel is what they use for most piercings, and then glass is also a good material to use against that wound. It's not going to irritate it. However, they do make stainless steel and acrylic tapers, which I've heard are not the best to use. So I would steer clear of those and only use surgical steel or glass tapers. But as you can see, it's called a taper because it tapers from big to small. And please excuse my hideous nails. I really need to get them done. There is a pointy side that gradually gets bigger until you have the end side, which is actually the diameter of the certain gauge size that you are stretching to. The little black rings that you see on the end are called O-rings, and those are just used to keep the taper in place on your ear. They act similar to the back of an earring. So again, this is a taper. This is the device that is used to do the stretching, but this little guy is not meant to be worn as jewelry. You will look rather silly wearing this in your ear for an extended amount of time. It's not meant for that, and it's actually really damaging to the ear. If you wear this in your ear just like to be cool and have a little pointy thing coming out of your ear, which I've seen a lot of people do, it's not meant for that. It will create uneven stretching, the weight distribution, because one side is obviously heavier than the other. It's going to cause really uneven holes, and you don't want that. You want your hole to be a perfect circle going, you know, straight. You don't want it to be tilting, because then your ear is just going to look lopsided and it's not going to look pretty, trust me. Do not wear these for an extended period of time. This is just meant to stretch your ear, and then once you are done with this, then you will just put your plug or your tunnel in. The only time that you actually can wear a taper in as jewelry for an extended amount of time is when you first begin, if your starter kit does not come with a small enough plug or tunnel. What I mean by that is, when you're first beginning, obviously your hole is not going to be this big or this thick around. So when you're starting, you might start off with a taper that looks something like a pin needle. Yes, this is a taper. It doesn't look like one because it's so much thinner than that one. You can't even barely tell that it tapers at all. But this is what you can wear for an extended amount of time. You would only need to wear this for a maximum like a week, I would say. And this is not going to cause weight distribution or unevenness because it's so light that it's not heavy enough to create those problems. So this right here is a 16 gauge taper, which I had to order online because the kit that I bought did not include one, and I didn't feel comfortable starting at a 14 gauge because I had just started from an 18 gauge, which is the normal piercing size if you just have your ears pierced normally. So I didn't want to skip that size because if you go from an 18 to a 14, which some people can do and their ears will be fine and it won't, you know, cause any pain, but for me it caused pain, so I wanted to make sure that I got that extra gauge in there, that 16, until I went to my 14, if that makes any sense. So when I first started stretching my ears about a year ago, I was literally clueless, had no idea what I was doing. I even walked into my tattoo shop and I was like, hey, I want to get my ears gauged. And they were like, okay. It probably looked so stupid, but it was so funny now that I look back, and thank goodness that they did not, you know, actually charge me for anything because that would have been funny. Anyway, so basically what I did, I went online and I ordered a kit. I got mine from Bod FX Body Jewelry. I just ordered it online. It was a full kit that started at 14 gauge and it went all the way up to I think 00. It was very inexpensive, probably like 20 bucks, maybe even less than that. And it comes with all the sizes that you would need from, you know, basically from where you start to where you want to end, unless you want to go bigger than a 00, which this is 2 sizes away from a 00. So of course if I wanted to go bigger than a 00, which I don't think I'm going to do, then I would have to get, you know, a different kit. But this is perfect for beginners because you have everything that you would need and it's very, very easy to use. But of course they do sell everything individually online. You can get really cool patterned plugs and tunnels, and you can get the spiral ones. And yeah, there's tons of things online if you want to buy things individually, and you can, you know, order a specific size. You know, if I wanted to change these out and have a different color, which I did have these little green ones for a while, then yeah, you can just type in 2 gauge plug or tunnel or cool design or anything. So now that I've talked about tapers and the device that does the stretching, you're probably curious about the process and how you go about stretching for the first time. Well, I will show you that. I'm going to demonstrate on my ear just so you guys can get a visual. Obviously, it will look a little bit different for you if you are at a, you know, a typical earring size, which would be an 18 gauge. I'm obviously at a 2, so it's going to look a little bit different, but I'm just going to take this out. I am sorry if this grosses a lot of you out because there will be, you know, a little hole. And yeah, I'm sorry if this grosses you out, just don't watch, I guess. So this is my tunnel taken out, and that is what my ear looks like without any jewelry in. I don't think it looks that gross, honestly. Like, I wouldn't feel embarrassed walking around without my jewelry in. So since I'm not actually going to stretch my ear in this demonstration because that's just a little extreme, I'm just going to, you know, act like I am. So I'm going to pretend that this is a 0 gauge taper. This is really a 2, which matches the hole, but if I put a taper in that matches the gauge that I'm already at, then it wouldn't get any bigger. So we're going to pretend like this is a 0. This is the next size up, pretend. Okay, I'm at a 2. The next size up would be a 0. Now, if you're a beginner, you would be starting with an 18 gauge hole, which is a typical earring sized hole. If you have your ears pierced, you have an 18 gauge hole. So you would be starting with a 16 gauge or a 14 gauge taper, depending on how small your kit starts or what taper that you ordered online. If you're like me, I started with a 16 gauge, but many people start at 14 gauges. They're so small that the slightest difference in size is really not going to make that huge of a difference. I just wanted to be safe and go with a 16 gauge because it was my first time and I had no idea what I was doing, and I didn't want it to hurt at all, even though it didn't hurt at all. It felt like putting a normal earring in. But yeah, anyways, so I'm going to start with my 0 gauge, which is actually 2, if you're following me. And all you would do is start with the pointy side, obviously. You would stick it in your hole, and then you would take the other side with your other finger back here, and you would just begin to pull the taper through your ear until you're all the way to the back and you can't really like pull it anymore. So that is basically the process. Now my ear is technically it's still at a 2, but it would be at a 0 right now if this was an actual 0 gauge taper, and I had stretched my ear. That's all you do. So now what you would do from here is you would find your matching tunnel or plug size. That way when you slide your taper out, you can immediately put your plug or tunnel right through where the hole is, you know. So for me, when I do a fresh stretch, when I go up a size, I like to keep my taper in for about 5 to 10 minutes just to kind of let my ear get used to the new size for a little while before I put my plug in. So now what you're going to do is you're going to take your tunnel and then you're going to put it around the circle. It's obviously going to be the exact same size, so you can't really fit it on there, but you're just going to put it where the other circle is. Just kind of line it up with the other circle on the taper. And then all you're going to do is, as you're pulling the taper out from the back, you're going to push with your finger the tunnel through the hole. So all I'm going to do is, as you can see, as I pulled the taper out, my tunnel is now in my ear, in place of where the tunnel was. And then you just push it through and you have your stretched ear. Now to secure the piece of jewelry, you're going to use the O-ring that I talked about before, slide it on the back, and this is going to act as an earring back, and this is going to make sure that your tunnel does not fall out. So if you guys noticed, when I did my demonstration, I just took my taper and I put it straight through my ear. Now typically if you're stretching your ears, you're not going to want to do that. The only reason I did it was because it was just a demo to show you guys what it looked like. I wasn't actually stretching my ears. My ears are currently healed at a 2 gauge and I can, mess around with them and they're not, open wounds right now. But when you are actually stretching your ears, you do not want to stick your taper in dry. You need some kind of oil or stretching balm to kind of lube up the taper so that it slides in the hole easier. Gosh. So for this, you're going to want to use a natural, organic, plant-based oil. You can use organic olive oil, coconut oil. A lot of people will say not to use those household oils, but I know that they work. I've had plenty of friends use olive oil and coconut oil to stretch their ears and they've had no trouble with it at all. So I think those are very safe to use. Another option, which is what I use, is called golden jojoba oil. Jojoba. And it's just in this little 2-ounce bottle. I did order this online from the same place that I got my body jewelry from. I don't know if it was from the exact same place, but I've heard that this is really, really good for stretching, so that's why I ordered it. And basically you just want to apply a small amount of the jojoba oil to your taper and a little bit to your ears and just kind of massage the oil into your ears so that the entrance of the ear and the taper can just slide right in. Okay. And another option that is pretty popular in the stretching world is called Gauge Gear. It is 100% organic. It's a stretching balm that pretty much acts the exact same thing as any of the other oils would. You just take a small amount, apply it to the taper, and apply it to your ear to help the stretching process. Just try to avoid anything unnatural like petroleum jelly or Vaseline. Stay clear of those. Just stick with your natural oils. And you will find that it is a lot less painful when using oils instead of just trying to stick the taper in dry. Now speaking of pain, the process of ear stretching should not be painful at all, as long as you're following the directions and taking it slow and not skipping sizes. I cannot stress this enough. Do not skip sizes. I promise you it is not worth it to go bigger, faster. It doesn't matter if you've heard of people skipping sizes and their ears turned out fine and they got to this size in this amount of time even though it was supposed to take this amount of time. I promise you, the slower the better. It's really just not worth ripping your ear or causing a blowout, and if you don't know what a blowout is, I dare you to Google ear stretching blowout and click images, and I promise you will not skip sizes after you see those images. They're not pretty, and that can definitely happen if you skip sizes, especially big sizes. Now that doesn't mean that you can skip sizes even when you're really, really small and you don't think that it matters that much because you're going up such a tiny little millimeter amount. It's still really important to just go size by size in the correct order. Now like I said, the stretching process is not supposed to be painful at all, but that doesn't mean that you won't feel slight pressure and a slight pinching type of feel while you are stretching. If you're feeling a slight pinch, that is okay, but if you're feeling like, ow, this is really, really hurting and this is unbearable and I feel like I should stop, then stop. Your ears are not ready to go up another size and you should wait a couple more weeks until your ears are fully accustomed to the first size before you go up. So again, you are stretching the skin around your lobe, so it's not going to be extremely pleasant, but again, it's not terrible. You will not be crying while you're doing this, and if you are feeling that kind of intense pain, pain, or if you see blood, or if your ear starts to swell up, you need to stop immediately because that's not what's supposed to happen. And you need to go back to your last size and keep it in until it's healed completely, and even add, I would say, an extra week onto it just because you did cause some extra trauma to your ear while stretching, and you need to make sure that your ear is completely healed before trying to stretch again. So once you've successfully inserted your taper and then inserted your plug or your tunnel and you've secured it with an O-ring, you're not going to want to touch it. You're going to want to keep that same one in for about 6 to 8 weeks. It is a long time. Stretching is a slow process. You're not made of Play-Doh. Your body is not used to its skin being stretched out like this. You need to give your body the amount of time that it needs to heal the wound, and then even more time for your skin to loosen around the piercing and be ready to be stretched even more. I really recommend that when you begin stretching to document it in your phone, which is what I did. I made a note in my phone called stretching schedule, and I kept track of what size I was at and how long I had until I could go up. Now let's say you've waited the appropriate amount of time, the 6 to 8 weeks, and you're ready to stretch up, and your ear is being stubborn and you're feeling a lot of pinching and you don't know if you're ready or not. You always need to listen to your body and use your judgment and your caution when you're stretching. If you don't feel ready, like I said, don't stretch and wait a couple more weeks. Now a helpful tip if you are having stubborn ears or your ears aren't as stretchy as you would like them to be, what I like to do is I like to stretch my ears after a really hot shower. It sounds really weird, but the steam from the hot water, you know, it really does loosen up your skin and it makes it more elastic, so it does help with the stretching process. And yeah, I recommend definitely stretching after a nice long hot shower. Another thing that you want to be cautious of is what kind of tunnel or plug. I'm just gonna say plug from now on because you obviously know that you have the option to pick between a tunnel or a plug, which actually, if you're not familiar, this is a tunnel. So as you can see, it actually looks like a tunnel, so that's, you know, why it's called a tunnel. You can see right through it, and that is what I have in my ear right now. You can see through my ear, so I'm wearing a tunnel. A plug is basically the exact same thing, except this is filled in with, you know, the same metal. It's not see-through. So that's the difference between a tunnel and a plug, but I'm just gonna continue to say plug from now on because it's easier. And yeah, so like I was saying with the tapers, the material that you can use and what to avoid, the same applies for your plug. So you're not gonna wanna use wood, acrylic, or silicone until your ear is healed. Also, when picking out your plug or your tunnel, you want to make sure that it is no flare or single flare. And what I mean by that is, as you can see, only one side of this tunnel flares out or gets bigger. So this is going to be the side that stops the tunnel from going through your ear. And then on this side you have no flare, and all you have is an O-ring to act as your earring back. However, if you have a no flare tunnel, then both sides are just going to be completely straight. It's just going to be a normal little round piece of metal that has no flaring on either side, and you're just going to have 2 O-rings on each side of the tunnel to act as an earring back on both sides of the tunnel to make sure that it does not fall out of your ear. I don't find that one as attractive because then you have a black O-ring in the front of your ear and you can see it, and I just don't think that looks as good. I think it looks nicer when it's just the metal showing. And yeah, for aftercare, it is much like a normal piercing. You want to use a sea salt solution, something like H2 Ocean, which if you've had a pierced ear, then you probably know what that is. Or you can even use antibacterial soap, which is what I use. Just take a Q-tip or a cotton bud or a cotton pad and just kind of wipe around the area of the hole. Just go around it, go to the front and the back, and just make sure that the area is nice and clean and there's no bacteria growing around it. And that's basically it for aftercare. I also, in the shower, I like to sometimes take it out once it's healed. Always leave it in while it's healing, but after 6 to 8 weeks, you can take your plug out in the shower and massage your ears and use a little bit of antibacterial soap and just kind of clean those bad boys out. And it's always important as well to take out your plug completely and clean around the area that's actually inside of your ear, because it can get a little gunky sometimes. I know it's gross, but it's the same as like an earring. If you keep an earring in too long and you take it out and there is a little bit of residue from just your natural body, just, you know, getting rid of stuff. And yeah, it's just good to keep those clean so you don't get infections or anything like that. I also will just randomly massage some more jojoba oil on my ears. I will take it out and massage my ears and then insert my tape or my tunnel back in. Jojoba oil softens the skin, it reduces scar tissue, it moisturizes, and it can be used to thicken the skin, like the lobe skin, so that your ears don't look too thin as you're stretching. So this is just a really great product to use and I really recommend it, and I like to use this about once a week. And this one is pretty obvious, but you're not going to want to put your dirty hands all over your ears. You're going to want to make sure that you're sanitizing your hands before you handle your plugs or your tapers or anything that has to do with your ears, because you don't want to be putting nasty bacteria around a fresh wound. So the last topic that I want to discuss before I end this video is the question of is ear stretching permanent, and can you go back? Once you stretch your ears, can you unstretch your ears? And to answer this, ear stretching for the most part is permanent, but it depends on how big you go to where you cannot downsize and your ears will not stretch back to normal. They say around a 2 gauge to a 0 gauge is the point of no return, to where that is, you've gone too far, you cannot, then take them out and they will naturally stretch back down to their original size. However, everyone's ears are different, and some people's ears will not even go back to normal at a 10 gauge or an 8 gauge. And then some people's will stretch back to normal even at a 2 gauge or a 0 gauge. So everyone's ears are different. There is no definite way to determine if your ears will in fact stretch back to normal or not. So if you know for a fact that you do not want to have stretched ears for a prolonged amount of time, then I would honestly not go past an 8 or a 6 gauge. That is just my educated guess based on the sizing and based on how, they say that a 2 and a 0 is the point of no return. But so I don't know if you want to risk going all the way up to a 2 and then hoping that your ears will stretch back down. I would just not go into it hoping that your ears will go back to normal one day. For me, I knew that when I went into it, I was like, I'm not gonna want to have this for a long time. I just think it's cool right now, and eventually I will want to have, I will want to be able to wear normal earrings again. So I will not be going past a 2 or a 0. A 0 will be my biggest size, and I do hope that they stretch back to their normal size one day, but I'm not gonna be completely devastated if they don't. I know people have pulled off the method of downsizing where it's basically the opposite of stretching. You would just go from a 2 gauge and you would put your 4 gauge jewelry back in and then let your ear kind of accustom to that size, and then you would wait a long time and then you would go down to another size. But a lot of time your jewelry can get lost because your ear is too big for the jewelry, and I don't know, a couple people have pulled it off, but I'm not sure that that would work for everybody. So if your ear does not begin stretching back to its normal size after you've taken your jewelry out, then surgery is really your only other option, I think. But again, a lot of people do use jojoba oil, and there's a couple other oils like YOUUUU oil, I think. There are a couple oils out there that are known to thicken your lobes, and the thicker your lobes are, the smaller your hole will look. So I know a lot of people do that too, but when it comes to stretching, I think that it is more of a decision that you're going to make and you know that you're going to have for a very long time. And if it's not something that you can commit to, I would just recommend not doing it. So I think that that's everything. I know this was a ton of information just shoved down your throat, but I did try to cover all the topics when it comes to ear stretching. I'm sure I forgot something. I mean, there's literally a million things that I could say about it because it is a very complex process, and it's not, just something that you decide to do one day. You have to research and you have to figure out what you're doing. And that is exactly what I had to do, because at one point I was a clueless little girl walking into my tattoo shop asking for gauges. Oh, they probably hated me so much. So that is it. I hope I covered everything. I don't know, but if I didn't, or if you have any further questions or concerns about my stretched ears, then just leave them in a comment and I will be sure to answer those for you guys. And yep, that is it. I will see you guys in my next video. Thank you for watching. Bye!